Can we use it in assessment yet? I think what you could, I think what would be an interesting thing if you actually had, what you could show somebody is what you can do with these little black cards, these ARToolkit markers, is you can show them a number of examples, and then they have to pick the correct example, so that you could do that in assessment. I've never seen that before, but I think what it allows you to do is, while you're sitting in front of a terminal, is to actually have them interact with physical objects and construct something and use that in the assessment. That's just a guess. So spatial AR, although I do work in all three of the displays and technologies, spatial AR is I think holds a lot of promise for museums and large public installations, because you can provide extra information to an exhibit. Although you might not want to project directly on the exhibit itself, but you can provide this extra information in situ right next to it and point to things. You can draw lines on the floor and on the walls and things of this nature. There's one thing that I think would be interesting, because I've talked to some people about rock art, and what you can't do with rock art is you can't touch it. And so, whereas if you could recreate a wall and allow people to touch it and interact with it, I think it would just make it more experiential learning. You just, and the other thing that you can do with this is provide a surround experience. And one of the things I'm interested in is that if you wanted to say, I wanted to view, once again, the rock art, it's not only that I'm viewing the rock art, but if I could recreate standing in Kakadu, then I could understand the rock art to a deeper meaning than being, in the South Australian Museum per se. So interesting. This whole thing with this surgical, I was talking to Harry Owen at Flinders Medical Center, and for assessment, one of the problems in some of the training scenarios, and what he's interested in doing, is allowing students to be able to repeat a procedure over and over again and kind of get a score, and be able to then also visually see what they're doing wrong. Because one of the problems in medical training now is it's very difficult for them to practice certain skills, and they don't know, and it's very expensive to get a senior medical specialist to coach them over a long period of time. But if you can come up with a simulator that allows them to say, no, this is what you're doing wrong, and get them to do some initial practice, and then get some base level skills, and basically say, yes, you're now competent at this level, so now you can go talk to your the senior medical specialist to then see if you're doing all the finer points correct. Yeah, AR tags another another one. So I think we're coming towards that. That's all I have to talk to you about. So are there any questions?
Okay, this is Jeff Chris back on here again. I just want to really explore this issue about assessment, because one of the, this is really early days in terms of doing things like augmented reality, and like I said earlier in the talk, Bruce, was really about, it's really about changing mindsets, because yes, the technology might take a little while yet before it's usable by your average academic. But really, I think what you've been showing and what other people have been showing is the possibilities. Because now that we can mix the virtual with the real, we should be able to create environments which are much more complex, much more meaningful, much more authentic for students, which means that we can actually set entirely different assessment tasks for students. And that's one of the things that we've been trying to explore during this whole Transforming Assessment series, is to really look where we're going with assessment, and do we think we're going to be setting the same sorts of simple assessment tasks for students as we currently do? And so that's really what, certainly from my personal perspective, I really want to encourage people to be thinking about is, where do we want to go with these types of assessments? Because the whole idea is then to put students into an environment where not only is it much more authentic in terms of trying to match what happens in reality, but it's actually moving them beyond that, because it's actually getting to think about what are the possibilities when we start mixing these different environments between the real, the real physical environment and in the virtual environment, because we're actually overlaying a new reality onto our physical environment.
Yeah, it's interesting because to pick the assessment, the idea is that you have to have some sort of physical artifact that you're going to match it to. So in the case of, like I said, in physics, you could make virtual experiments. It becomes interesting that if you want to do something in mathematics or some sort of discipline that's purely in the symbolic, I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. But if you can match that, or certainly skill-based education, where they allow you to do a certain amount of testing and training on replicas of very expensive pieces of equipment, I see this as particularly low-hanging fruit for this technology.
Yeah, and that's certainly true, and I'll hand over to someone else to make a comment. But the one thing I'd say there is, I think there are potentials in these non sort of science or quantitative or physical sort of areas. I think the whole area of cultural perspective as well would be a really interesting one, to overlay a virtual environment on top of a real environment, and then to look at the cultural perspectives around that, because we can actually immerse people into environments that are going to be quite different from what they're used to. So I'll stop talking now, and Catherine. Sorry, Philip, Catherine. Someone's got their hand up to speak. If you're having trouble with your mic, just put some text in so that we know if you're still trying to speak. Okay, that's fine. Is there someone else who would like to make a comment on any of that we've just been talking about? Okay, Chad?
Okay, while Philip's typing, I'll just ask. Thank you, Bruce. Really, really interesting stuff, and I'd like to have a go at playing ARQuake at some stage, if possible. But I'm really interested in the applications to serious games, and if you're aware of any applications or potential applications in kind of educational gaming or anything like that using VR or AR. Thanks.